Hey folks, Professor Finn here, and today we're doing something that's a bit different than what I normally do. I'm actually going to respond to a viewer's comment. So one of the viewers posted this comment under one of my funeral law lectures. There was a situation in my town where a person went to pick up cremated remains after they had been there for a year. When she arrived, she was told the remains had already been picked up. The funeral home would not tell her who picked them up. My question is this: does the funeral home necessarily have to tell somebody to whom they gave the cremated remains to if the person asking for them isn't one of the people designated to come and receive those cremated remains? So, excellent question. Couple of things going on here. So, couple of disclosures to get things right out of the way. I am not a licensed attorney. I am not authorized to practice law in any jurisdiction, and I am not providing any sort of legal advice. This is for entertainment and informational purposes only, but I will be applying general rules of law as they are taught in mortuary schools across the nation to the scenario that you are presenting to come up with some reasonable conclusions. So, the first thing is the cremated remains had been at the funeral home for a year. Now, historically, generally we're talking about the 60s, 70s. This was not something that was ever considered under law. So a lot of jurisdictions did not have any legal guidance as to how to dispose of unclaimed cremated remains. And generally, funeral homes would purchase, or if they owned a cemetery, they would utilize one of the existing mausoleum crypts above ground, generally, to place unclaimed cremated remains. So they wouldn't be kept at the funeral home. All the unclaimed stuff would be at a cemetery and kind of fall under the cemetery's jurisdiction to protect against grave robbing and stuff like that. So, in the modern practice, the Cremation Association of North America has a Model Cremation Act, which is intended to give guidance to state legislatures um, when they're creating cremation laws to think of the common legal issues that pop up, and certainly the claiming of unclaimed cremated remains is something that needs to be in there. So here in the state of Florida, Florida Statutes 497.607 covers this and essentially says that after 120 days from the cremation, a funeral home is authorized to dispose of unclaimed cremated remains in any manner that is basically legal and dignified. And here in Florida, the general way we do this is we scatter in one of the waterways, whether it's the Gulf of Mexico or whether it's the ocean. It's one of those two things. So it is also permissible to scatter, say, in a communal scattering garden at a cemetery, so that you are not the eternal custodian of these things, because as long as they're under your care, the funeral home is liable for what happens to these things. So the first thing is, if there is any guidance as to who is authorized to pick things up in your state when they are unclaimed, that is going to be the defining the defining situation. So now let's go into who is the party picking things up and what is the funeral home's obligation to them. So we're going to start with, what if the person coming in to pick them up after a year is the legally authorized person or the authorizing agent? Both of these terms are kind of synonymous. They imply that that is the individual that has legal control to arrange and control the funeral, and is also the person or the person who is authorizing and has the power to authorize the cremation. So this is the person in charge. Might not be the next of kin, which is why I'm specifically using legally authorized person or authorizing agent. So what if they come in and they say, tell me who picked them up? Well, I'm probably going to say the funeral home is under an affirmative obligation to tell that individual who picked them up. And that's because they have the right to control all aspects of funeralization. They're the authorizing agent that allowed the cremation. So it is within not just the realm of possibility, but the realm of reality, that the person that was in charge of things would want their agent, the funeral home, to tell them who came and picked something up. And I think that would be true even if an authorizing agent did not list themselves on the cremation authorization for ability to receive cremated remains. While I was in practice, and a lot of the training that is out there, you always want to get more than one person to pick up cremated remains, because what happens if that individual becomes incapacitated? Now it becomes this legal quagmire that, well, I'm only authorized to release to this person. Who are you in the process? So you have to wait for that person to get something like a durable power of attorney over the person that's now incapacitated, so that they are acting in their legal stead, and then something like a durable power of attorney would be able to come in and receive, because they're not receiving as themselves, they're receiving as the POA of the person that is incapacitated, who was authorized to pick things up. So when you're in the funeral business and you are trying to get people, who's going to pick up for what, you want to get multiple signers. You absolutely want to get multiple signers. So now, what happens if the person who is coming in, like you state here, is one of the people that is authorized to pick the urn up, but is not the legally authorized person? I would probably say the funeral home is under no affirmative obligation to disclose to that individual who actually picked things up. They're not the person in control. The funeral home can confirm to them that, yeah, well, you were able to pick something up, but now it's gone. Have a nice day. Um, that is a secondary thing. Now, do not have access to something like Westlaw, where I'm always getting like the latest cases getting thrown to me, because I'm a private party and those subscriptions are quite expensive on a professor's salary. So I'm not going to pay for it and get the use out of something like that. But I would probably say that I am not aware of something like this happening, where it's been disputed in court and a court's opinion rendered as to what the funeral home should do in something like this. From a funeral home standpoint, if a person's coming in that is not the legally authorized person, but is one of the people that is authorized to receive the cremated remains, the best practice would be to take that person's name and number, contact the person in charge of the arrangements, the legally authorized person, and say, I have so and so here, or they came by to pick something up. They want me to disclose who it is that picked up the cremated remains. Would you like to call them? Here is their contact information. Or would you like me to call them back and disclose who picked up? Um, Generally, I would not disclose information without the authorizing agent telling me it's okay. That's just me being paranoid. Um, this is when it comes to the pickup of cremated remains, this is one of those areas that can be extremely contentious. That's why you do not want to list people that you do not want to have the ability to pick things up. And the best practice is, if there are numerous items, say little keepsakes with small portions of cremated remains or locks of hair or something, and they're all going to different individuals, if a funeral home is responsible for disseminating all these products to different people, they need to have different pickup tickets essentially for each and every one of these. That release of cremated remains is going to be separate for each and every item. It is much better from a liability standpoint for a funeral home to turn everything over to one individual and then have them do the dissemination from there. So that way the funeral home does not inadvertently give something to someone that they shouldn't. But again, proper documentation, proper record keeping, proper checks of identification mitigate a lot of the liability that goes on here. But the best practice is you have a receipt of cremated remains for each and every keepsake or piece of jewelry that is going to each specific party, and you keep them all separate so nothing gets confused. So I hope this helps. You are welcome to go ahead and drop another comment. But this was a rather interesting question, and not one I wanted to try to address just in text. I wanted to kind of explore this a little bit for the benefit of everyone who kind of pays attention to the channel. So, folks, have a wonderful day. If you yourself have a question about something like this and how the law might be applied to it, or how funeral practice occurs in reality, feel free to drop something in the comments in any one of the videos, and I will be happy to respond about things like that. So everyone take care, and I will see you next video.